Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel here. It's the Mac. Hope you guys are all doing good this Christmas holidays. We're coming up towards New Year's Eve. and Wargame Design Studio has a winter sale going on, spanning to I think the 5th of January, if I'm not mistaken. Right, so I picked up this great game. Uh, Squad battles, man. We're going back to squad battles. It's been a while since I covered squad battles on the channel, actually. And This is the Korean War from Wargame Design Studio. Squad battles tactics here. So we're going back to the smallest scale that Wargame Design Studio has. It's those 5-minute turns and 40-meter hexes, if I'm not mistaken. It's pretty small skirmish fighting going on. But I've had my eyes on this title for a while. I really am intrigued and interested in the Korean War. And it's common tongue to say that it's the forgotten war. It's the war that's been written very little about and highlighted in books and media and documentaries. But nowadays it is kind of well covered, I would say, but it wasn't for a long time. So you would say it's the war of the ideologies. It was the West versus the East, basically. Commies versus capitalism. So this great game here, I think it comes with over 70 scenarios. And it hasn't got the latest huge update that Wargame Design Studio has made on some of their squad battles titles. The real improvement, the graphics, the sounds, everything, the complete haul over. This is still the 40. I think it's the 405 version, could be. So we're gonna have a look at some of the documents. So this is what it looks like when you fire it up. It's the old toolbar. It's get this thing out of there. Right. I'm using Windows 11 now. I'm not really used to it. Okay, so what was I? Yeah, so they haven't got the sweet updates that they've got in some of their titles. So over 70 scenarios. There's also 3 campaigns that comes with this game. So we're going to be looking at documentation and stuff. So first of all, I just pulled this map up here. So this is where North and South Korea is. Obviously, there's been a lot about North Korea recently in news with the war in Ukraine and Russia and all that going on. But it's always been a very controversial state, a very hermit kingdom as opposed to South Korea. But the reason I pulled this map up is because I want to talk about some history later on. But we're going to have a look at the change. Yes, it's actually 4000 now. I think the 405 and stuff is the latest. But so this one hasn't got, the latest beauties on it. But it's still a really good game. I mean, if you're into Korean War, if you want to pick up a title covering it and small scale combat, then this is definitely your choice, because it's still a very good game and very well researched, and using that great squad battles game engine. So where to go? So the Almighty Notes is really, in the sense, almighty in this title. It's 121 pages to get, man, and this is so good. I've actually almost read the whole thing. It took me a couple of hours. It's quite the read, man. But it's really good. They've got something called Grunt School. They start off with, and this is a really good read. It tells you basically how to think and how to play this game, and how to understand the mechanics, and how to understand infantry tactics, and get your mindset into the game, because squad battles is not an easy game at all. I mean, it's kind of easy to learn. There's not that many rules, and it's kind of sort of not that much to get into. But the depth of the game is immense, because you really have to think like a soldier and a commander, and you really need to use proper tactics to pull off victories in this game. If you just want to run around trying to annihilate the enemy and fire at anything that moves, you're going to lose and you're going to die, because this is not how war is actually fought. There's actually tactics involved. So this here, Grunt School, Tips of the Squad Battle Commander by Frank Echo 4 Harmon. Wild Bill Raiders is some old school stuff here. It's really good. So this is a must read, I would say, if you get this game. It really is telling you how to sort of use your forces and fight, and how to think about weapon usage, and how to set up ambushes, how to hold fire, how to move in terrain, how to think about fields of fire and fire teams and suppression fire and assaults and stuff. So really, really is good. So it's quite extensive. It's a couple of pages covering that. Then I have another really good part in this. This goes through all the scenarios. There is a separate PDF for it that you can open, so you don't always have to open the almighty notes. It's just called Scenario List. It's a PDF file of its own, and this is really good as well. It's by our late Bill Wilder, who passed away a few years ago. And this is also really good to get a grasp of the scenarios, because usually when you fire the game up like this, for starters, the scenarios are in alphabetical order in this release, so they're not in nowhere in a chronological order, so to speak. If you want to fight the battles as the war progressed, you just can't. You can't do that here. They're all mumbled up in different, kind of different parts of the conflict, basically. Some of them that are like this one here, for instance, Fox Hill. There's a 4-part scenario here. They're obviously in order because they have the same starting letter and stuff. But this document here is really good, because it says in the game they provided you with enough battles to keep you busy for a while. There's every kind of engagement you can imagine. By no means are they all take this hill or hold this hill. While hill fighting did dominate the war, there was a lot more action that we have included for you. So there would be like protecting convoys, making raids, launching amphibious assaults, cutting off enemy movements, escorting prisoners, making airdrops, commando attacks, ambushes, and a host of other situations that we thoroughly enjoy. So lots of cool stuff there. And this is kind of important here, because there are 3 campaigns included in the game. And they are, if you enjoy taking a leader through a myriad of experience in the battlefield. One is a Turkish contingent involved in the war. That's pretty cool. So you get to play as the Turkish commander of the forces. Another is with the U.S. Rangers, and there's a third one of the 89th Tank Battalion during the first year of the fighting. So that's are the 3 campaigns that comes with the game. So the following list of scenarios is in chronological order. If you wish to play them in order that events actually or hypothetically occurred, use the list. So these are the designers, and so here they go. So here they are in chronological order. This one starts the 28th of June 1950. It's roughly when the conflict started. So this is right off the early. It's called Valor in Defeat there. And then it moves on, July, August, September, October, November, and December. It goes up to April of 51. No, actually, keeps on going, sorry. It goes all the way up to 53, with the last year of the war there. So, pretty cool. You get to fight and do something from every single year of the war. It lasted 3 years. So, this is a very good document here. And they also have, so if we go back to the the main notes. This is exactly what they got in that document I just showed you. But then they have this. It goes. They have a reference of, and it basically. I mean, this is really extensive and well written. Instead of watching like a YouTube snippet of the war explained, which is good, it's fine. I mean, that's what YouTube is for. It's really great. I mean, there's millions and tons of videos covering all kinds of conflicts, and it gives you really good, like watching a clip there really gives you a good idea of the conflict, and you get sort of all the general idea of what, what happened, and what happened during the conflict, basically. So the 25th of June, 1950, the Koreans' attack begins. So this is the 38th parallel, and this is how they actually progressed. We're going to go over that, but this article here by Wild Bill Wilder is actually tells you basically the whole story of the conflict, what happened, and what actually led up to the conflict and stuff. So, in broad strokes, if you look at the map, so North Korea and South Korea was actually occupied by the Japanese, and they basically held this peninsula all through the Second World War. I think they occupied something in 1910, like early 1900s. And what happened was, as the Japanese were losing the war in 1945, and they pulled out of the assailant, and they were then nuked and all that and surrendered, and the Russians moved in and occupied, and the Americans put forces here to sort of stem the communist tide, and there was sort of two governments were created quite early. And as you can see here, the 30th parallel is actually somewhere around here. So as you can see, the line we got today is actually what we had after the Korean War. This is what it turned out to look like after the 3-year conflict there. So the North Koreans massed a lot of troops, and the Americans actually pulled out in 48. I think in 49. The Russians left in 48, and and left the North Koreans with tons of weapons and stuff. Chinese were supplying them as well, and the Americans pulled out in 49, and had sort of left the South Koreans to fend off from themselves. They helped them organize an army and supply them and stuff, and they have a big army. But it wasn't as strong as the North Koreans, so they actually launched that attack, as we saw here, and they were, taking the South Koreans by surprise and the world, and they had amassed a lot of troops there. So they smashed through the defenses. They captured Seoul, and it was like a fight and retreat for the South Koreans all the way down. And they sort of made a stand somewhere along here. Yes, let's have a look at that other picture. Yes, so they made a stand, and the Americans, and they pleaded for help in UN, and it was like a UN resolution thing going on to send support and forces to help South Korea, and there was like a dispute there because the Russian delegate of the UN had actually left the building in protest because he was protesting because the representative of the South Koreans, Korea, was actually someone from the South, from the South Korea. So the Russians weren't able to put their veto on this decision that UN made, and so it passed, and America, put huge amount of forces there, and I think there was something like 16 other countries that helped out, like the Turks and many other countries, the Brits, the Canadians. Lots of forces were used in this UN forces that came here as well. So they arrived, and there was a big fight going on, and they were losing, and the North Koreans were on on a high top, but they blew all their steam once they came down to this sort of small Pusan perimeter, and the Allies and the UN pouring forces here, and the tide turned, and they actually fought back, and they actually had like a landing. They landed some forces. I think it was close to Pyongyang. Some forces here, Nampu. They had some forces in the back, so they were stressed out. The North Koreans, they couldn't fight two fronts, and they were on the losing streak. And sort of the UN and the Americans came up to the 30th parallel and decided to actually continue the fight and sort of liberate, so to speak, North Korea from the commies. And this, of course, upset the Russians, and it's upset the Chinese, and yeah, we're not even going to go into the air war that went on here, but there was a huge air war going on, in Korea as well, from Russian pilots and American pilots actually, but the Russians had to disguise their involvement, but everybody knew it was Russian pilots fighting with the Americans there. So the air war is a complete different chapter. It's not even covered in the game, so I'm not going to go into that. But I don't actually know much about it. Anyways, so what happened was they pushed in, and they took Pyongyang, and they decided to actually, I think they came all the way up to the north here somewhere, the UN and American forces. And then China intervened. It sent like 300,000 soldiers across the border. And that was just way too overwhelming for the forces that were here. And it was cold, it was winter, and it just was terrible. And the allies, so to speak, of the Americans and the UNs had to retreat, and it was just a massacre. It was just such a bloody war going on here. And I think they were pushed out, and the Chinese and the North Koreans actually managed to cross the 30th parallel again, but were sort of stabilized here. I don't think they captured. Actually, I think they did capture Seoul again. Seoul changed hands many times during the war, and then as it grinded on, Douglas MacArthur was the man in charge, and he actually wanted to nuke North Korea, and was very close. So actually, but the American president actually intervened and called stop to that, because if they would have nuked, it would have been a third world war, and it just would spiral way out of control, basically. But anyways, so they fought back, and sort of that, and it was a stalemate in the fighting. And then there was finally a peace agreement, and this was the new sort of DMC that was created. So that's where it stands even today, and the conflict was never resolved. It was never peace. It's still actually an ongoing conflict between North and South Korea. It just was a sort of a ceasefire, but they as we all know, there's still huge animosity between these two, especially these people in North Korea. And we still don't know what will happen in this particular conflict. That's where we are today. Wow, that was a really fast sort of up. You have to pardon me for making mistakes in that, but I just wanted to run through it. But that's in broad strokes what happened. But the good thing about this is that this really is well researched, and this also talks a lot about the state of the American army at the time. The Americans were sort of riding the ruse after the victory of World War II, and let's see if I can get the presidents right. So I'm not a real expert on that, but. Dwight D. Eisenhower became the new president and saw an urgent need to end the conflict. Okay, so was it Truman, or who was this guy? That sort of, Harry S. Truman had brought about much of this, faced with the spiraling post-war economic. Yeah, so Harry S. Truman was actually the reason for that. The weird thing was that, America had one of the biggest army in the world, and they sort of had defeated both the Japanese and did a huge part in Europe. and it was the Russians and the Americans that had like the huge army. But they made some huge cutbacks after the war ended. So, as you can see here, for instance, it says thus it was that from 45, the armed services was scaled down from 12 million to 1.5 million, which is quite quite the cutback there. And apparently a lot, I mean, over 50,000 Shermans were like built during the Second World War. But in just a short span of years, they sort of dismantled and scrapped basically the whole U.S. Army. It was just massive, decommissioning of that army, and nothing was sort of spared. Even the fleet, the uh, the fleet was cut down to just and the air force, everything was just sort of cut down. So the Americans didn't actually have like a huge army when this war broke out. So they had to sort of you know rebuild and again and sort of funnel things over to sort of help the South Koreans there. So they cover a lot of that in here, which is really interesting to read. Uh, and then this okay, I'm on the wrong one. It's this one here. Yeah. So then this continues. This talks about this whole aspect of the war. And then this really cool thing is that they have these different sort of articles about Canadians, heroes of Canadian forces, participations, tanks and tankers. This is really interesting as well. That the Americans really had to pull tanks from all over the place, and on paper they had like these heavy tank battalions, you know, attached to infantry divisions and stuff, but actually they didn't. They were sort of just often just light tanks, or they weren't at all any tanks. They were on paper, but they were actually not built and stuff like that. So it takes up a lot of information about that. So it says when hostilities broke out in Korea at the end of the June 1950, this plus some antiquated M15 and M16 half-tracks were the only armor readily available to stop the enemy. South Korea had no armor units whatsoever. North Korea, on the other hand, began the war with over 120 Russian T-34s, over half of which were the new version T-34-85 and upgraded versions of the T-34 with much more effective anti-tank gun. So they had a lot of tanks, and the South Koreans had basically nothing. So, and it didn't have like good anti-tank capabilities as well. So they were really struggling there in the start. And so they talk about some American tanks that were the M26 Pershing, the M24 Chaffee. So there was a lot about, and then some British tanks were used as well. And it says the tank inventory includes 64 of the light thin-skinned Chafees, 147 of the heavier Pershings, and 97 of the newest model, the M46 and M47 Patton tanks. The bulk of the U.S. tank force, however, as the World War II vintage medium Sherman M4A3E8, EZ8 with a powerful 76 gun. Despite its older technology and smaller gun, this would be the favorite of the tankers throughout the Korean conflict. But then they ramped it up and they pushed in and they got the job done basically. They had this MacArthur's farewell speech here. It's amazing the stuff that's in here. They have something about Chinese army. So really, really good notes in this game. And then they have these articles, and there's tons of them talking about different kinds of conflicts that happen, and the determined tanker. They have so much interesting stuff here. These sort of articles here talk about the weather. They talk about. I mean, it's so much here. It's amazing. So really, really cool read. And lots of sort of cool information that for a conflict that you might not know much about. It's here. I didn't know, for instance, that the Korean War was actually the first conflict that body armor was used in. So there was something new when I read about that the body armor was first implemented in the, I mean, on scale in the Korean Wars. So, really, really good documentation that comes with this game. So, and that's basically what comes with the game. There are some maps and stuff as well, but so I really like this. This is a cool game. I'm going to be doing let's play of it, and you guys can see the game feel. I'm going to be trying to be like tactical and implement what I know from my own experience and what I know about infantry tactics and how to think, because this is how you actually meant to play these games. They're not just get your dudes out, run across the map, and shoot anything that moves. They are really deep strategic games. You really need to sort of, and of course there's the element of luck. You gotta have some luck. That's what you gotta have in real warfare as well. You gotta have a pinch of luck, even though everything's stacked in your odds in your favor. I mean, if you are unlucky that one of the enemy rounds manage to hit something that it wasn't supposed to hit, and everything goes tits up basically. So that element is also very well portrayed in this game, that you might think you have everything lined up, but something goes wrong. So we're gonna have a look at it. So for this introductory video, I could just fire up something. For instance, I don't even know which one is the getting started here. I don't think I've tried getting started, but there is a getting started, of course, and that would be actually I think I might have played it. Which one is it? Commando Courage Beginner. Yeah, so recommended to have manual. Okay, so that should be this. I think you're supposed to be playing the allies here. So we could just fire it up and you guys can have a look. And it's supposed to be automatic, not with fog of war. Okay. Yeah, this one here. Yeah. So that's what the game looks like, man. Support is available, right? So this is like obviously a small scenario. So this is the max zoom in on the game at the moment. So they don't have the 3D or anything. It's, as we know from the new, they have changed the graphics a lot. But there's some things you can do in this as well. Like sometimes I like to play with the hex grid off. Wherever that is. Maybe you can't turn it off, I'm not sure. But they have alternate. You could play with like using NATO symbols like that if you want. I really like these portraits though. If you click on them, this is what it looks like, and all the weapons. So we're going to be going over this in my Let's Play. This is what the game looks like. So you have like, for instance, here you have a squad of 10 men. Morale B. These guys are pretty good. These are Canadians, I think. So 6 of them are with the Lee Reinfeldt. 2 have the Sten submachine gun. 1 has an Owens. Is that actually 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11? That means 11 men. It says 6, yeah. So it could be that. Oh, it's 1. Okay. No, it says 11 here. 11 weapons, but there's only 10 men. Maybe the Brenner, the machine gunner, has this like a submachine gun here. Owens. He probably has the Owens. Could be. I'm not sure. And there's a 2-man bazooka team. So, all these individual weapons, they have the reliability, lethality, and penetration. And they're at 100% status. This is something we're going to be going over a bit when we play. Yeah, pretty cool stuff. Uh, I think I'm going to leave it at that, and because we're going to be doing more gameplay and more showcase as I'm doing a let's play. I still haven't really decided yet what to do. I really like this list that sort of tells you in the, get to play them in chronological order. You know, we might actually just do this: the Valor and Defeat, the first one of the war that they cover here, early days, northwest of Seoul. So this is right after. This is when the North Koreans are approaching Seoul for the first time in the major attack. It's half an hour. It sounds good. So that sounds like an interesting scenario. Yeah, so I think I'm going to end it here, and I hope you guys got a good understanding of this game. Well, maybe not the gameplay, but an overall view of what this game is all about and what the conflict it's covering. And then in part two, now we're going to be doing a let's play as I usually do, and we're going to go in, and you're going to see the meat of the game a bit, how to play it and how it actually plays out. So I want to thank you guys for watching there. Hope you guys are going to be enjoying this let's play. We're back to squad battles now, and I'll see you in that part. Have a good one.